What made the death of Walter Winchell worthy of instantaneous nationwide coverage wasn't only that his unorthodox campaign had touched off a century's worth of anti-Semitic rioting outside Nazi Germany, but that the murder of a mere candidate for the presidency was unprecedented in America. Though Presidents Lincoln and Garfield had been shot and killed in the second half of the 19th century, and McKinley at the start of the 20th, and though in 1933 FDR had survived an assassination attempt that had taken the life of his Democratic supporter, Chicago's Mayor Cermak, it wasn't until 26 years after Winchell's assassination that a second presidential candidate would be gunned down. That was New York's Democratic Senator Robert Kennedy, fatally shot in the head after winning his party's California primary on Tuesday, June 4th, 1968. On Monday, October 5th, 1942, I was home alone after school listening on our living room radio to the final innings of the fifth game of the World Series between the Cardinals and the Yankees, when in the top of the ninth, with the Cardinals coming to bat in a 2-2 tie and leading the series 3-1, the play-by-play broadcast was halted by a voice with that finely articulated, faintly anglicized diction prized in a network news anchor back in radio's earlier days. "We interrupt this program to bring you an important bulletin. Presidential candidate Walter Winchell has been shot and killed. We repeat, Walter Winchell is dead. He has been assassinated in Louisville, Kentucky, while addressing an open-air political rally. That is all that is known at this time of the Louisville assassination of Democratic presidential candidate Walter Winchell. We return to our regularly scheduled program." It wasn't quite 5 p.m. My father had just left for market in Uncle Monty's truck. My mother had gone out to Chancellor Avenue a few minutes earlier to buy something for dinner, and my single-minded brother was off in search of a trysting place to resume importuning one of his after-school girls to grant him access to her chest. I heard shouting in the street, then a scream from a nearby house. But the game had come back on, and the suspense was tremendous. Red Ruffing pitching to the Cardinals' rookie third baseman, Whitey Kurowski. Cardinals catcher Walker Cooper on first base with his 6th hit in 5 games, and the Cardinals needing only this victory to take the series. Rizzuto had homered for the Yankees. The portentously surnamed Eno Slaughter had homered for the Cardinals. And, as historic little fans like to tell one another, I knew before Ruffing had even fired his first pitch that Kurowski was about to hit a second Cardinal home run and give the Cards their 4th straight victory after an opening day loss. I couldn't wait to run outside crying, "I knew it! I called it! Kurowski was due!" But when Kurowski homered and the game was over and I was out the door and headed at top speed down our alleyway, I saw 2 members of the Jewish police, Big Jerry and Duke Glick, running from one side of the street to the other to bang on doors and shout into hallways. "They shot Winchell! Winchell is dead!" Meanwhile, more kids were rushing out of their houses, delirious with World Series excitement, but no sooner did they hit the street, howling Kurowski's name, than Big Jerry began barking at them. "Go get your bats! The war is on!" And he didn't mean the war against Germany. By evening, there wasn't a Jewish family on our street that wasn't barricaded behind double-locked doors, their radios playing non-stop to catch the latest bulletin, and everyone phoning to tell everyone else that Winchell had said nothing remotely inflammatory to the Louisville crowd, that he had, in fact, begun his speech in what could only be intended as an open appeal to civic self-esteem. Mr. and Mrs. Louisville, Kentucky, Mr. and Mrs. Louisville, Kentucky, proud citizens of the unique American city that is home to the greatest horse race in the world and birthplace of the very first Jewish justice of the United States Supreme Court. And yet, before he could speak aloud the name of Louis D. Brandeis, he'd been brought down by 3 bullets to the back of the head. A second report, aired just moments later, identified the spot where the murder occurred as only a few yards from one of the most elegant municipal buildings constructed in the Greek Revival style in the whole of Kentucky, the Jefferson County Courthouse, with its commanding statue of Thomas Jefferson facing the street and a long, wide staircase leading up to the grandly columned portico. The shots that killed Winchell appeared to have been fired from one of the courthouse's large, austere, beautifully proportioned front windows. My mother began making her first calls immediately upon coming in from shopping. I had stationed myself just inside the door to tell her about Walter Winchell the instant she got home, but by then she already knew the little that was to be known. First, because the butcher's wife had phoned the store to repeat the news bulletin to her husband just as he was wrapping my mother's order, and then because of the bewilderment apparent among the people out on the street who were already scurrying for the safety of their homes, failing to reach my father, whose truck hadn't yet pulled up at the market. She of course began to worry about my brother, who was cutting it close once again and probably wouldn't come rushing up the back stairs until seconds before he was due at the kitchen table with his hands washed to the day's dirt and his face scrubbed clean of lipstick. It was the worst moment imaginable for either of them to be away from their precise whereabouts, unknown. But without taking time to unbag the groceries or register her alarm, my mother said to me, "Give me the map. Get your map of America." There was a large folding map of the North American continent squared away in a pocket inside volume, one of the encyclopedias set sold to us by a door-to-door salesman the year I started school. I rushed into the sun parlor where, shelved between the brass George Washington bookends, bought at Mount Vernon by my father, was the whole of our library, the 6-volume encyclopedia, a leather-bound copy of the United States Constitution awarded by Metropolitan Life, and the unabridged Webster's Dictionary that Aunt Evelyn had given Sandy for his 10th birthday. I opened the map and spread it across the kitchen table's oilcloth covering, whereupon my mother, using the magnifying glass that I'd received from my parents for a 7th birthday gift, along with my irreplaceable, unforgotten stamp album, searched for the speck in North Central Kentucky that was the city of Danville. In only seconds, the two of us were back at the telephone table in the foyer, above which hung yet another of my father's awards for selling insurance, a framed copper engraving replicating the Declaration of Independence. Local dial service within Essex County was barely 10 years old, and probably a good third of the people in Newark didn't as yet have any phone service at all. And most, who did, were like us on a party line, and so the long-distance call was still a wondrous phenomenon, not only because making one was far from an ordinary household experience for a family of our means, but because no technological explanation, however basic, could remove it entirely from the realm of magic. My mother spoke to the operator very precisely to be sure that nothing went wrong, and we weren't charged by mistake for anything extra. "I want to make a long-distance, person-to-person call, operator, to Danville, Kentucky, person-to-person to Mrs. Selma Wishnow. And please, operator, when my 3 minutes are up, don't forget to tell me." There was a long pause while the operator got the number from the directory operator. When my mother finally heard the call being placed, she signaled for me to put my ear beside hers, but not to speak. "Hello?" Answering enthusiastically is Selden. Operator: This is long distance. I have a person-to-person call for Mrs. Selden Wishful." "Uh-huh." Selden mumbles. "Is this Mrs. Wishful?" "Hello? My mother's not home right now." Operator: "I'm calling for Mrs. Selma Wishful." "Wish now," my mother shouts. "Wish now." "Who's that?" Selden says. "Who's calling?" Operator: "Young lady, is your mother home?" "I'm a boy," Selden says, taken aback. Another blow. They won't stop coming, yet he doesn't sound girlish. His voice higher pitched than when he'd been living downstairs. "My mother's not home from work yet," Selden says. Operator: "Mrs. Wishnow is not at home, madam." My mother looks at me and says, "What could have happened? The boy is alone. Where could she be? He's all by himself." Operator: "I'll talk to anyone." Operator: "Go ahead, sir." "Who's this?" Selden asks. "Selden, it's Mrs. Roth from Newark." "Mrs. Roth?" "Yes, I'm calling long distance to speak to your mother." "From Newark?" "You know who I am." "But it sounds like you're just down the street." "Well, I'm not. This is a long-distance call, Selden. Where's your mother?" "I'm just having a snack. I'm waiting for her to come home from work. I'm having some Fig Newtons and some milk." Selden: "I'm waiting for her to come home from work. She works late. She always works late. I just sit here. Sometimes I have a snack." Selden: "Stop right there. Be still a moment." "And then she comes home, and she makes dinner, but she's late every night." Here my mother turns to me and makes to hand me the phone. "Talk to him. He won't listen when I speak." "Talk to him about what?" I say, waving the phone away. "Is Philip there?" Selden asks. "Just a moment, Selden," my mother says. "Is Philip there?" Selden repeats. To me, my mother says, "Take the phone, please." "What am I supposed to say?" I ask. "Just get on the phone," and she places the receiver in my one hand and lifts the speaker for me to hold in the other. "Hello, Selden," I say. Softly, tentative, unbelieving, he replies, "Philip?" "Yes. Hi, Selden." "Hey, I don't have any friends in school." I tell him, "We want to speak to your mother." "My mother's at work. She works late every night. I'm having a snack. I'm having some Fig Newtons and a glass of milk. It's going to be my birthday in about a week, and my mother said I could have a party." "Selden, wait a minute." "But I don't have any friends." "Selden, I have to ask my mother a question. Just wait." I muzzle the speaker and whisper to her, "What am I supposed to say to him?" My mother whispers, "Ask him if he knows what happened today in Louisville." "Selden, my mother wants to know if you know what happened today in Louisville." I live in Danville, Kentucky. I'm just waiting for my mom to come home. I'm having a snack. Did something happen in Louisville?" "Just a minute, Selden," I say. "Now what?" I whisper to my mother. "Just talk to him, please. Keep talking to him. And when the operator says 3 minutes are up, you tell me." "Why are you calling?" Selden asks. "Are you going to come visit?" "No." "Remember when I saved your life?" he says. "Yes, I do remember." "Hey, what time is it there? Are you in Newark? Are you on Summit Avenue?" "We told you we were, yes." "It's really clear, isn't it? It sounds like you're just down the block. I wish you could come over and have a snack with me, and then you could be here for my birthday party next week. I don't have any friends to invite to my birthday party. I don't have anybody to play chess with. I'm sitting here now practicing my opening move. Remember my opening move? I move out the pawn that's just in front of the king. Remember when I tried to teach you? I move out the king's pawn, remember? Then I put out the bishop. Then I move the knight, and then the other knight. And remember the move when there's no pieces between the king and one of the rooks? When I move my king over 2 spaces to protect him?" "Selden," my mother whispers, "tell him you miss him." "Ma," I say to her, "tell him, Philip, I miss you, Selden." "Do you want to come over for a snack then? I mean, it sounds like... Are you really just down the street?" "No, this is a long-distance phone call." "What time is it there?" "It's about 10 to 6. "Oh, it's 10 to 6 here. My mom should already be home around 5:30 at the latest. One night she came home at 9. "Selden," I say, "do you know that Walter Winchell was killed?" "Who's that?" he says. "Let me finish. Walter Winchell was killed in Louisville, Kentucky, in your state today." "I'm sorry to hear that. Who is that?" "Operator, your 3 minutes are up, sir." "Is that your uncle?" Selden asks. "Is that your uncle who came to see you? Is he dead?" No, I say, and I'm thinking that alone now, out in Kentucky, he sounds as though he were the one who was kicked in the head. He sounds stunned, stunted. He sounds stopped, and yet he was the smartest kid in our class. My mother takes the phone. "Selden, this is Mrs. Roth. I want you to write something down." "Okay, I have to go find a piece of paper and a pencil." Waiting. "Selden," my mother says, more waiting. "Okay," he says. "Selden, write this down. This is now costing a lot of money." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Roth. I just couldn't find a pencil in the house. I was at the kitchen table. I was having a snack." "Selden, write down that Mrs. Roth," "Okay," "called from Newark." "From Newark? Gosh, I wish I was still in Newark, living downstairs. I saved Philip's life." "Mrs. Roth called from Newark, to be sure." "Just a minute, I'm writing." "To be sure everything is okay." "Is something supposed to not be okay? I mean, Philip's all right, and you're okay. Is Mr. Roth okay?" "Yes, thank you for asking, Selden. Tell your mother that's why I called. There's nothing to worry about here." "Should I be worried about something?" "No, just eat your snack." "I think I've had enough Fig Newtons now, but thanks anyway." "Goodbye, Selden." "I like Fig Newtons, though." "Goodbye, Selden." "Mrs. Roth?" "Yes." "Is Philip going to come visit me? It's my birthday next week, and I don't have anybody to invite for my birthday party. I don't have any friends in Danville. The kids here call me Saltine. I have to play chess with a kid who's 6 years old. He lives next door. He's the only one I can play with. One kid, I taught him chess. Sometimes he makes moves you can't do, or he moves his queen, and I have to tell him not to. I win all the time, but it's really no fun, but I have nobody else to play with." "Selden, it's hard for everyone. It's hard for everyone now. Goodbye, Selden." And she placed the receiver onto the hook and began to sob. and we'll pause.